Hello and welcome to a Taylor's Tales podcast. This is Chris's Corner. I'm your host, Chris Taylor, and I'm back this week with a brand new podcast. This week, I'm back with my best friend, Alix Young. Welcome to the show, Ali, once again.
Hello there.
Play the clip.
Hello there.
General Kenobi.
You love it. You love it. That's how it's going to go from now on. But great to have you back, Ali. This week, we're going to be removing the positive emotions, and we're going to be talking about Stoicism. So we've already failed our our ability not to react to events, and Marcus Aurelius would be very disappointed in both of us. But starting off, what I wanted to get from you was like, number one, what does Stoicism mean to you, and like, where did it come from? Like, what got you into it?
Yeah, so I guess what I'd probably start with is Stoicism is probably something that's only been quite new to me. So I'm not an expert, just getting that out there. So I guess it's my interpretation of what I understand so far. I think some part of me has always been somewhat stoic, or perhaps wanted to be stoic. And I guess in that, I mean, like you said, it's the ability to have things happen, have conflict and drama in your life, and be able to deal with it effectively and efficiently, not react to it, to be able to I guess do what you need to do. Almost an ability to remove emotion from reaction, which is like the more you learn about it, it's like the harder it is. It is hard, and I think it's like a constant thing. It's like you can never truly do it because you're always going to react with emotion. But I think it's catching yourself reacting with that emotion and saying, hang on, no, I may not be in control of the situation that's just happened, but I am in control of my reaction to that.
Yeah, definitely. And I was gonna say that, like, what you're talking about is the difficulty in that is your immediate reaction is to get all fiery in negative situations, and to in positive situations have like extremes. And I was going to save this for later, but I think it's really important now. How do you think like modern society, with its extreme views left and right and all of the world that's happening now, do you think it's more important than ever to look into that?
Yeah, I think it's crucial, really, to actually be able to react to be able to react in the correct way is to take the emotion out of it. Like so often what we think is just so clouded by the emotion from like the initial, like, oh, well, that makes me angry. Oh, well, that makes me sad. And I guess so many people today are like that in, modern society. You kind of can just see it wherever you go. People react and they don't stop to think. And it's like they react and they think that the reaction is, it's like it's not their reaction. It's that reaction was inherited from the statement or whatever happened to them beforehand. So their reaction is just like coupled with that. Whereas in reality, you can actually control that. And I think that's kind of what I take from it. It's like a skill,
Yeah. I think you're 100% correct, because as we get older, we increase our skill like set, but nobody ever teaches you how to have this ability to communicate. We all get taught early on like how to speak and how to write, but we don't actually get taught the type of speaking and the type of emotions and interactions we have with other people. We're meant to just learn that through interacting with other kids at school or at university or all of these different environments. But the truth is that this ability to face danger or face sort of any situation with little to no emotion. It's kind of the opposite of what human beings are programmed to do. We have that live or die in us where it's like, oh, terrible situation, I've got to run away from it, or I've got to fight.
That's right.
So I was going to say, like, if you look at this today, like, we have less of a connection to our sort of hominid slash early days mankind caveman genetics. So I think I was going to get into this as well. Isn't it more important today than ever that we have the ability to sort of detach from the emotion and find a way to still have these fun adventures and do things, but without getting off track and offending people, and basically letting your emotions spill out into the world?
So I guess it's quite a fine juggling act, isn't it? It's like you want to express sort of the Stoic values because of the benefit you can get from that, but at the same time, you still need to be able to express yourself in the right ways. But I think deep down, you kind of know how to do that. It's if something really bad happens to you, say the death of a family member, for example, you can react to that. You can, all of a sudden, your life goes downhill. You start drinking, you start having all these bad influences, and you give into them. And I guess that's kind of that reaction, whereas really, to be truly Stoic, it's knowing, I guess, when you see the negative emotionary side of things, and being able to avoid that, whilst at the same time be able to see when it's positive, and actually when you can express yourself. Because if you never express yourself, well, then you're not human. That's a robot.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the it's a line, and I think, like I say, I think you kind of know that line. It's just you have to have trust in yourself to actually gauge it.
Yeah. I'd like to point out, you
sense.
expressed that perfectly, by the way, because you talk about the line that's being drawn, and being Stoic also reminds me of detaching emotionally, which is something that I covered recently in my Warrior Archetype podcast. And I talked about how if you detach too much, you become somebody who no longer has the ability to relate to others, and no longer has the ability to emotionally connect, which is still really important. If you yourself, you're a father, if you had your son and he came to you and said, "Dad, I've got an injury," and you just said, "Oh, just walk it off," like, it's kind of like there's so much you can get from that relationship.
But then at the same time, like, I guess when you think about your response to that, like, say your kid comes to you with an injury, and you do have multiple responses. Like, you could have the response of, "Oh no, are you okay? Ah," or you have the actual logical response, which is kind of a Stoic response. It's actually, "Oh, hey, like, are you?" Oh, I guess not fully, because you do want to express emotion and concern. But it's more, "Oh, hey, are you okay? Oh, yeah, no, that's okay. Just put some of this on it, and that'll heal right up." And I guess that was almost a Stoic value, isn't it?
I yes, and I think you keep like leveling up in these sort of areas now, because when I think of that, I'm thinking to myself, like, if you have that kid come up and express that emotion, I hear so many parents say, "Oh yeah, you have to reflect the sort of attitude the kid's coming to you. So if they're upset, you're upset with them, and in order to create that bond." But what you've just described is actually teaching the kid, like, it's not that bad, without being a psychopath.
Yeah. Well, it's teaching the child as well, because it's otherwise every other time that child gets hurt, they're gonna be, "Oh no," which is I guess just completely against the whole Stoic philosophy. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost like showing them your philosophy for life. But I guess that's kind of where I was saying before. It's like I didn't always know what Stoicism was, but deep down, I always sort of believed in the actual philosophy of it without knowing what it was until I actually, found out about it. And then I was like, oh, hey, there's actually a name to this belief.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so much behind it. I mean, Stoicism was like created in the 3rd century of all, like 3rd century, I think it was like AD, so after death, and by a guy called Xenon. Am I wrong in saying that?
I was looking for, and I read something about Xenomorph dude. Yeah.
Hey man, hey, I've been all over this shit, man. I can't find the bathroom. You know where it is? Like everybody keep running from it. I'm like,
yeah, and he like
sort of
fantastic
crazy
name.
alien.
That's so true. He came down from the heavens in a spaceship, and he was like, "My people."
It's incredible. Like you look at the ancient Stoics, and this Xenomorph dude, Epictetus, or Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and like you look how long ago they were alive, and you listen to the things that they're saying, and it's like, oh my god, like I can't believe I'm relating to someone who lived, almost 2,000 years ago. Like that's, like I find that incredible, and I think maybe that's one of the other things that probably drew me to Stoicism, was realizing, hey, these people that we read about in the history books who you just picture as black and white, he's a Roman emperor, so he's a evil man, like, but yeah, in reality, you hear about the things and read the things that they talk about. It's like, oh my god, this is fascinating.
It is, and I emphasizing on that. It's why I also I look at Buddhism as kind of like a hand-in-hand religion with Stoicism, in the sense that they also have very similar values, and the history behind the religion. There's no God. There's just living life in a way that matches your foundations, your beliefs in those ways, and how long it goes back. And like you said with Marcus Aurelius and Xenon, the fact that they're from such a long time ago sort of has a little bit of credibility, in the sense that they did it in such a time that life was, hundreds of times harder than what we're going through today. And the fact that they were still able to do it, just crazy.
100%. Yeah, but it is mind-boggling.
Yeah. And I was going to say this as well, with that in mind. You recently read 1984, and I was really interested to get your sort of take on the comparisons between how in 1984, with the new regime of, what we look at as communism within Britain in the book, how there's so much actually emotion within this book, even though the idea is that they remove it from society. Did you get that at all from reading it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's, the whole thing with Winston and Julia, but at the same time as there being the emotion, like I couldn't help but think it was actually more of a lack of emotion, and it's like they're trying to convey it. I think Winston and Julia are almost trying to convey their emotion, but in reality, like you look at the relationship between them, and like there's sort of times in the book where they basically say they don't really care about each other, and you look at the foundations of their relationship, and Winston goes from 1 minute to, oh, I want to rape and kill her, and then the next she hands him a letter saying I love you, despite having never spoke to them, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, okay, I guess I love you too. And it's like it's almost like, because of the lack of emotion within their society that they've created, it's created like almost a hypersensitivity to emotion, to a point that emotion is just so it's like they think they can, I don't know how to express that. It's like they think that they think it's emotion, but it's not really.
Yeah. And it's almost easily manipulated from what
yeah,
I'm
well,
seeing.
that's it. And you look at, like the ending of the book, and spoiler, at the ending, obviously Winston and Julia, they both succumb to the party, and basically give up on their beliefs. And it's like the whole time you're just thinking, oh, they're not going to give up. They're not going to give up. This is the classic protagonist. You know, they're going to hold on to their beliefs. They're going to shoot him, but he's going to still believe that the party's corrupt and they're wrong and doublethink is wrong. And by the time they shoot him, he actually is exactly what they want him to be. And it's, yeah, I think they basically, they prove that they have accomplished what they wanted to accomplish by removing emotion. And yeah. Although I guess you could say there is still emotion, mostly with the, like you think about like the 2-minute hates. When,
yes, I was going to bring that up.
The images come up. Yeah, the images come up, and all of a sudden it's, oh no. But then that hate is like pure manipulation, and it's fabricated. You know, the party fabricate that hate just to push their own agendas.
Yes.
So it's a fake emotion. It's people think that it's their own emotion, but in reality, it's not.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I was exactly what you just said. You know, the moment I saw it in your eyes, where you're like, "Hang on a minute, there is a piece of emotion."
Yeah,
there.
yeah, exactly. That was what I was just thinking. I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, there is that." You know, when they're screaming at the screens.
But you said it earlier. You said that there needs to be a line drawn, and they've done the opposite of that. They've taken where the line was, and they were like, "Actually, we can reach on the darker side of things and manipulate the use of the dark." Emotions like anger and hatred by just having war all the time, and I'm glad you noticed that. That's so cool. Yeah.
Oh, it's just interesting because it's you know, like you read about Goldsteins, you know, documents, his manifest, whatever it was, and how they set out to create this sort of untoppable
utopian
society.
Yeah.
Utopian society, and come the end, they've succeeded because, you know, what I took from it was that Goldstein is not actually a person as such, but it's something created by the party to almost draw out those the Winstons and Julias.
Yes. And I don't know if you ever saw the movie with Christian Bale, and it's called Equilibrium. Have you ever seen that at all?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's a very similar concept. He's based in a world where emotion is illegal, and they take it out, and he's basically somebody who has to hunt down people who have emotions. And it's a very similar concept where it's a utopian society. Everything's perfect. Goldstein, the face of society, is used as a way to be able to control everyone and basically say, look, this man has this perfect, you know, idea of a world. And they all believe it. And it's this, you know, dark, gray society that doesn't really have anything. So we're looking at like both sides of it, where Stoicism allows you to detach, but there's also that extreme where detaching so far takes you into that grayness.
100%. That's it. That's very true. You could almost look at it is an extreme of Stoicism.
Yeah, exactly. And then you look at the other side as well, where there's not enough detachment, where emotion has determined so much. And we can go into like World War II, for instance, and say like that whole palaver was started because, for instance, the French made an emotional decision that they felt like they need reparations from the Germans because of World War One, rather than looking at it from a stoic perspective and thinking that if we do this, you're just going to create an emotional uproar within a nation, and they're going to feel unjustified because of it. So do you see these in history? Do you have any events that you're thinking like, oh, that could have really been affected if we thought this through Stoicism?
Stoic history. Good question. I think it's probably a lot of conflicts, really, isn't there, that you look back on and you think, you know, if the leaders in charge at the time had really thought about it. I mean, I guess, you know, after 9/11, going in and invading Iraq, that's probably about as emotional a decision as it gets. You know, they obviously had 9/11, and then they decided that they had to take some form of action. So, you know, they went straight in and didn't really turn out too well, did it?
No, exactly. I
Whereas
like that.
in reality, if they took a bit more time to, I guess, gather more intel, maybe they would have realized, hang on, this is probably not the best use of resources or time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think America at the moment, and back in 2001, both of us were too young to really get to grips the whole
Yeah.
importance of that event. And as I've got older, I've started to realize like a lot of the decisions that were made were actually made either out of greed, because there's a lot of stuff in Iraq that's valuable and can be used, but there's also the whole use of emotion, like the uproar from the Americans, where we've been wronged, time to fight back.
100%. And you can blame government for that, but at the same time, if they didn't invade Iraq, you can guarantee that the American population would have been in uproar, that nothing had happened, that they'd been attacked and there was no retaliation.
Yeah, and again, to back up your point even further, Vietnam, a whole war based off just not liking another regime.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, that's another good example.
Yeah, so these sort of like consistent decision making. I mean, obviously we can't say like, oh, if I was in their shoes, I would definitely not make that decision, because you never know what you're going to have. But it's still really interesting to look at history, look at how Stoicism and emotional decision making causes, like a 8 to 10 year war, or like in Vietnam's case, something like 20 years. Which is crazy to think in comparison to, World War II and World War One both being 4 to 5 years. So it's crazy collateral on both sides. But moving on from there, I was going to ask, with Stoicism being sort of a new way of thinking, how we see it in today's society. It's really discoverable via YouTube, discoverable through podcasts, all of these. Do you have any favorites? Do you have any clips that you've seen and really enjoyed?
Yeah, so like what I've been listening to is The Daily Stoic on Spotify.
Nice.
Yeah, so Ryan Holiday. So it is sort of the every day he'll do like a minute little podcast, and he's got some longer ones as well, which are really quite interesting. So I think he was sort of the person that I started listening to, and I guess set me on the journey.
Set you along the path.
Yeah, no, he's quite interesting, and he gets different guests as well, which is it was interesting to hear the different perspectives.
And do they sort of dive into the history, or is it something that they apply it to real life, something along those lines at all?
Yeah, sort of both. There's a lot of talk of the ancient Stoics, Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, and the books, Meditations and the sorts. But I guess about a lot of it's about how it's sort of applicable in the modern era. And it's just
funny, isn't it, that this sort of relates. And I know this is a bit of a stretch, but it does remind me a little bit of the idea of the Jedi, in the sense that they also see like negative emotion as like the lead to the dark side.
But that's very true. There's definitely a bit of stoicism about that.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I really like with stoicism, you can be a warrior, you can be somebody who is, it's not a passive religion or a passive ideology of some sorts, because it provides you with a way to address scenarios, rather than say to yourself, you have to do everything within, the hierarchy of things, and not do this and not do that, but rather what you can do to help something. So
I think it's quite a wise belief, I think, which is sort of the same as the whole Jedi thing as well. It's, you look at the decisions made and you look at them now in hindsight, and it's like, yeah, that was the right decision. And I guess that's kind of what like Stoicism is. It's about being able to look at it afterwards and say, yeah, that was the right choice. Whereas quite often when a decision's made based on emotion, you look back at it and you're like, yeah, that's probably not quite how I wanted to do that.
Oh, that's made me think as well. Have you had a scenario in your life where you wish Stoicism had been applied to it, and then something that you've applied to it now?
Yeah, right. Um, yeah, probably, I don't know, maybe like during school, if I had more of a stoic ideology, maybe I would have, yeah, just sort of been more productive with my time. Been able to not negatively react. Yeah, I know. I think it's probably just would have helped me. It probably work as well. You know, like there's definitely times at work where someone will say or do something, and it will kind of set you off, and you'll just, and you know, you might not even react, but you might maybe over the next hour or two, you're just in your head thinking, "Oh, I can't believe they did that." Oh, blah, blah, blah. Whereas, you know, nowadays you probably just look at it and be like, you're not going to think about it like that. You're going to think about what you can control.
Yes,
And
and
you can't control other
that's really
people.
important. Yeah, exactly. And being able to say that to yourself, I find that it's easy to say, but so much harder to do, because when I was younger, I was exactly the same, in the sense that I wish I had my anger and my outbursts under control. Obviously, that's hindsight is 2020. Very easy to say now and not so hard, easy to do back then. But as
Yeah,
you said,
yeah,
Ali, the ability to, I mean, for me personally, in order to get rid of that voice afterwards that you're describing, I write it down. So I'll put it in a diary, and I'm like,
yeah,
oh, I'm going to get it out of my
yeah.
head
It's
and
good.
chuck it on a page, because otherwise it's just there biting away at you.
Yeah, it lingers.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's the worst.
See, that's actually probably that's probably a point. Like, you know, like I've always had this thing at work where it's always really bothered me if someone doesn't like me, or if I know that someone's made comments about me, that then it will stick in my head, and I'll be there in my head, and I'll be like, oh, you know, oh, why don't they like me? Oh, what did I do? Rah, rah, rah. What can I do to make them like me? Whereas there's been like a change in me to a point now where it's like, if someone has said something, or I know someone doesn't like me, I kind of am just a bit like, well, everyone
Meh.
can't like me, you know. It's a more farty, you know, just love everything.
Dude, I wanted to dive into that because you spoke about Amor Fati, and after you spoke to me about
Yeah.
this recently, it made me really think. I mean, we had a discussion recently where, you know, you were really open with me about things, about life, and talk to me about the first sort of steps of Stoicism, and it's actually made me really, it's super helpful. So I wanted to see for you, love everything, how you see it in work, how you see it in life, how you see it in your relationships. How have you, you know, applied it, and how do you see it used in the future?
Yeah, so this is actually quite an interesting point. So, like, I mean, just in everyday life, like at occurrences where I would usually find frustration and anger, I just repeat to myself, amor fati. And there's an example today. I was driving home, and on the way home, I got stuck behind someone going really, really slow. And that always really annoys me when I'm stuck behind someone going really slow. And it really annoys me. And that's when I caught myself, and I was like, no, you need to stop. And I said, amor fati. And then I have a little dialogue, an internal dialogue. And I say, well, you know, think about it. Like, why are they going slow? You know, who knows? Maybe they're old. They can't actually tell. Like, is that their fault? Not really. Like, we're all going to get old. Like, there's multitudes of reasons, and you know, then you can look at other ways of looking at it, and you can say, so I'm going to be a bit slower home. Does that really matter? Like, that means I have more time just driving on the open road, which is, you know, driving's quite enjoyable. So it's just being able to look at something you'd normally find frustrating and negative and try to find a way to shift it into a positive. And like, there's so many ways of doing it. Even the worst things that can happen, you can find a way to shift it. There was once, I think it might have been the Daily Stoic I was listening to, or someone I was listening to, and there was basically conveying that point, and they were saying, anything could happen, but like, your kid could die or something, and then it's like, I mean, you're probably going to definitely lose some of your Stoic values if that happened, but then you don't have to pay all this money. Like, it's applicable to anything.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm so glad you brought up commuting, because I used to see people run for the train. And I used to think to myself, like, hang on a minute, slow down. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Life moves fast, and it moves seriously in a way that you think to yourself, like, everything's going to end if you don't get to work on time or you don't do so many things. But the truth is that life moves on without you. The sun goes up and sun goes down, and we will forget this. So it's really important that you brought that point up, because life it's uncontrollable.
I think that's another thing, man. It's just being in a rush. Like, something that I found in myself is that I'm always in a rush to do things.
Yeah.
And like, you realize you just don't need to be. And the more you're in a rush to just rush through things, rush through the meaningless little tedious things of your day, that's what makes up your day. Like, you need to try and enjoy those things. And hang on.
Mid podcast, mid call. I love it.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, like you need to enjoy those things. Lost my train of thought.
You're just in the middle of talking about enjoying the little things in life, and I totally agree with you, because those little things, they make up your day, like you said, and they also they add up. It becomes a pile. You start disliking your mornings. That's going to become a real heinous crime to yourself more than anything else.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, like I said, the more that you're in that little race to just rush through your day, get to the good parts, and then you start to realize, actually, these good parts are not, the whole day should be the good part. And it's like you're rushing through it, and it's like you're rushing through your life. It's kind of, I guess, a realization that I've had.
Wow. Yeah, that hit me hard, because I used to think that like that all the time. I used to think, if I can just finish uni, or if I can just get past A levels, or if I can, just get to this point, this holiday, there's always there's always something more.
Just get this bit done, and then,
it's never enough. It's never enough. And the truth is that even when you get to that just point, there's always something else. And so, it's really important, the point you made. And I was really intrigued to know, like, at what point do you think we can remove the at just point? Do you think your job, like, that takes 8 hours of your day, reflects that?
A few moments later.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, sorry, I'm back. Sorry.
And we're back. We've had technical difficulties on the other side. I love it.
Oh dear.
But back to the point I was going to make is you make a fantastic point, in the sense that, some people hate their jobs. Like, they get to the point where 8 hours of your day becomes like a nightmare, and that you say, if I can just get to the end of the day. But do you have any advice for people like that? Do you have any advice there?
Yeah, so like I enjoy my job. I always look to improve, and I think that's crucial. I think you need to be trying to improve. And a lot of the time, you can get bogged down thinking, well, I don't really want to be doing this. But it's like, well, are you going to be here next week? Are you going to be here in a month? Are you going to be here in a year? It's like, well, if you're answering yes or I don't know, well, then surely you should be trying to make it the best scenario that you can make it. And if you want to go and be successful and do successful things, well, now's the time to do it. Now's the time to practice and to learn skills that are going to help you for when you do find something that you do want to do. Like, I don't want to be doing my job for the rest of my life, but by trying to continually improve and do better, it's setting me up for when I do find a career that I do want to pursue.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'd like to also point out, in having that ability to want to improve and still want to do your job well, you're gonna like enjoy the moment so much more. And I think that when you
Oh,
eventually
100%.
do that later on career, you might realize like, oh wow, I've still really enjoyed my time beforehand, and that you get to the later career and be like, this is, similar situation, just different problems.
Yeah, and like that's the other thing as well. It's like, if you're just going for every day thinking, like going into it with a pessimistic, nihilistic view, well, you're not going to enjoy your day. Like, if you go like I speaking from experience, like the position I worked at before the one I'm at now, I used to go in every day thinking today's going to suck, and sure enough, it would suck. And I had no, like, I didn't see any way of that changing. And it wasn't until I actually shifted my mindset and said, well, like, no, I need to do the best I can. And I don't know, like it was more like a lot more of a positive outlook on it. And that's when things started to change and things started going better. Because if you go in thinking, oh, there's no chance I can get this all done, you're not going to get it done, because you're not going to look for ways to get it done, because you're just already defeated. And if you're already defeated, well, you've lost,
Yeah. And
So,
I'm
but
going to bring up
to
a
say you've
fantastic
lost,
quote for you
you
there.
can, yeah, what's that?
It's, the battle is won before it's even begun.
Yeah, very true. It's very true.
It's important to remember that, because like you have to prepare yourself mentally for anything. Like when we talk about workouts, I took George through one of my workouts yesterday. He nearly died. He got to 45 minutes and gave up. It was hilarious. But sorry, George, you're listening to this. You did the best you could, bud. But what I said to him was, break it down into small chunks. Like you do, if you can't do, 8 reps or 10 reps, do 5 reps, then switch over to the other arm, do another 5 reps, and just break it down.
Yeah, and the gym's such a good analogy as well, because it's the incremental progress. It's you're not gonna go in and lift 300 kilo. That's just not gonna happen. Yeah. But maybe you can go in and lift 3 kilo, and then maybe the next week you can lift 4, and it just keeps going up. And it works the same, I think, in just so many aspects. It's like you constantly try and improve, like week by week, try and improve yourself. And that's probably really quite Stoic as well. It's that constant need for improvement and growth. Yes. Knowledge as well.
Yes. Speaking of knowledge, I mean, I constantly talk about reading as well. You've just read 1984, and like how many days was that?
5, which is probably that is the quickest I've read a book since primary school. So yeah, it was just, I don't know, it was just captivating. And it was like, I just couldn't put it down. I was reading it and just the way it resonated. And it's just, I just found it was so well written. Like, I knew it was fairly old, and because it was fairly old, I was thinking, it's probably going to be fairly like archaic and difficult to read, but it just wasn't. It was almost as if someone could have written it yesterday. It's
so true, mate. I think that when you get a book that you can't put down, you're increasing your knowledge, like you've said, but you're also just enjoying it,
Yeah, and like what I kind of really enjoyed about it was, every time I came across a term that I didn't understand or didn't fully understand, I'd Google it. And that really helped me to sort of nail down some of these terms. Going into it, like there were terms that I kind of knew, but only in certain contexts could I really truly understand. So like, I remember like totalitarian. It's like I kind of knew what it was, but then when I Googled it, all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes more sense. And there was just so many words throughout the book that just I was like, and I'd Google, and then I'd be like, oh, okay. And
The bourgeoisie,
that's kind of
proletariat.
proletariat is another one that, you know, I was like, what the heck is a proletariat? Is that a type of fish or something? And yeah, sure enough, no.
So good, but it's so true, because when we're at school, I remember feeling like I'd be looked down upon if I didn't truly understand something like this. So it's so good.
Yeah, that's
like,
it.
Yeah, you look past
and
that.
it's like it's like it's about not being too proud to admit your own flaws and inadequacies, and to be able to say, you know what, I don't actually understand that word. And I think if this was Alix 5 years ago, I'd probably have read it and just read straight through and not quite fully grasped the word, and therefore not quite fully grasped the point and the message is trying to put across.
Yes. Yeah, truly important. You've taken like the thing that I look upon as the most important thing in improving yourself is like, you're not comparing yourself to other people. You're just like, I'm better than who I was yesterday. So
100%.
magnifique.
That's the best way to live your life. Yeah.
100%. And with Stoicism, it's going to level you up as well with having all these little things. Like for me personally, COVID, like a lot of people saw it as a negative, but I feel like I've learned so much about myself, about how I can improve, how I learn, all of these little things where who are my, you know, who are my proper mates out of it as well. You've really understood what's going on in life. So you can see a negative situation and you can see it as a negative situation. You can see it as an opportunity to move forward and to keep growing. So yeah, it's just exactly that.
Yeah, 100%.
So based off everything we've talked about today so far, what would you say the main message for Stoicism is, you know, based off the history you've learned, based off the little things that you're implementing in life? What would you say if someone didn't know about Stoicism and you said, I want to get them into this? What would you say to them?
Stoicism is a way to transform your brain into the brain that you want and need to have. But you're going to have mental, what's the word?
Toughness?
I can't think of the word. No, not mental toughness. It's like you're going to have to be really like present when making those decisions. You're going to have to, you know, it's not something you're going to read and then it's just going to click. It's going to be something you're going to read and then have to apply it when you see a chance to apply it. And I guess that's where, like how I was saying about how my little bits throughout my day where it's like something that would normally frustrate me or anger me. If something frustrates you or anger you, repeat to yourself, amor fati, and then just think about that. And, you know, it just every time. And you'll probably find yourself getting less angry and less frustrated.
That's perfect, mate. Really is. And I like to add to that, you'll feel more, and I call it zenny, in the sense that you're just at peace and peaceful in the moment.
100%. Like there's a power to it, you know, when you manage to suppress your emotion of anger or frustration, and you manage to say, no, I don't need that, and you shift it to the side, you feel powerful because you're like, I am in control.
I love that. You are in control. You right there in the camera now or listening, you are in control of your life. Ooh, meta. I love it. That is the best way to end the podcast, on a positive note, on a way for you to control your life. Thank you, Alix Young. Yeah, exactly. Strength and laugh and enjoy life and be at peace. This has been a Taylor's Tales podcast. This has been Chris's Corner. I'm your host, Chris Taylor. Thank you, Alix Young.